speaking to Brett Okamoto. Quote, I'm getting to the point where I'm sick of not fighting. That's good to hear. I'm not getting any younger. I put that tweet out saying I want to fight in May or June, but I didn't say who because I was weighing my options, and now Woodley is my best option. I see him on TMZ every week talking about me. I'm like, what the F? If that's what you want to do, it's not normally my weight class, but I'm with it. I think it's my title we're fighting for. If he's the one calling me out, whose title are we fighting for? Who's the real champion here? He goes on to say, I'd like a good 2 or 3 month camp. We'll figure it out. There's definitely going to be something I'm trying to fight. That's good. And of course, Woodley said yesterday that the fight with Diaz is way more likely than people realize. He continues, talking about the UFC. They called me out of nowhere when I wasn't trying to fight nobody, Diaz said. They asked if I would fight Woodley, talking about back in December. And I said, well, I'd like a 3 month camp. I told them I'd fight him on shorter notice, but would send them what I wanted in the contract. It was nothing out of the norm. My boxing coach said something like about $15 million in an interview, but that was never the number. I'm told it's a fraction of that. Then I saw in the media the UFC said they never approached me about it. I was like, F it then. I wasn't the one asking for the fight. Of course, it remains to be seen whether the bout will happen anymore. Diaz goes on to say, finally, he's just living the life right now, talking about McGregor, and he's got a magnifying glass on him. Whatever he's doing, Diaz said. I don't give an F what he does. I'm sure he's up and down. Do I want to be in these lights? Why am I not in these lights? I need to get in these lights. I need to get out of the lights. It's just a crazy roller coaster. Okay, so the Connor angle here is another one we haven't even gotten to yet. 844-796-7874. Let me repitch this question, if I may, because I think it's a little bit different now than it was yesterday. You heard Woodley talking about it. You heard Woodley say the UFC wanted it. Now you've got Diaz saying he's all in on it too. So let's recap here for just a second. UFC offered this fight to the various parties in December, but it fizzled for whatever reason. Either it was too much money or short notice or whatever. It just didn't work. Now, you apparently have renewed interest from the promotion. Not for UFC 222, but down the line. Woodley wants it. He's your reigning champion. Diaz wants it. He is your reigning superstar in this case, right? You look at the UFC welterweight division, your top contender is Wonderboy Thompson, so that doesn't do a lot of good. Now, RDA is number 2. I think that's probably the deserving fight, but be that as it may, Colby Covington's at 3. So, when I put all of those pieces together, do you think this is going to happen? Do you want it to happen? Diaz versus Woodley for the UFC welterweight title. 844-796-7874, 844-SXM-RUSH. Let me know your vote. Now, Marissa, I've read these quotes to you. What is your reaction to them now that you've heard them?
Makes sense. I mean, I see Nate's point of view on this. This has kind of landed in his lap. He's right. The champion is calling him out for a title fight. He knows his value. And that's the thing that the UFC probably hates the most, is finally a Diaz brother truly can say, I know my value. Look what I put up in numbers. Look at all the people who want me or who are still talking about me. They're talking about him on ESPN. The guy hasn't fought in, what, how long? Year and a half?
17 months, something like that.
17 months, yeah, a year and a half. He hasn't even been fighting. He's not in the news a lot, and there's still everyone's talking about him. So I think he's got the right idea. I mean, this is his time to pounce. The UFC now has another card falling apart. God only knows if Khabib Tony will even happen. I'm not holding my breath. And you have a lot of weird matchups coming up in the future that'll leave them needing main events that we won't have because we have champion versus champion fights on the horizon, right? So there's going to be pay-per-views in August, September, October that might be very difficult to fill without clear title fights like this that could really be big. So, I get Nate. No one can blame Nate for his approach to this whole situation.
No. I mean, if they're going to offer it to you, what are you going to say? Nate, for the greater good of the conventional ways in which we have booked matches in the sport, you need to say no.
Yeah.
Like, this is so unrealistic. People are going to do what's in their best interest. I completely get it. But that doesn't mean I have to go along with it or I think it's a good idea for the sport generally. Or, that I think it's I would not say that Nate can't win. I think it'd be very foolish, very foolish. But I don't know that he's as tough as a test as RDA at welterweight. I still believe, and you even heard Nate say it himself, it's not really his weight class anymore. And again, I made this point before. It's not true that Nate is terrible at welterweight. That's not true. But he is 3-3 up there. 2 of those matches being against McGregor, so he's 2-2. And yes, the 2 wins were not against as elite talent as the 2 losses. But I still don't think it's true that Diaz is somehow a terrible fit at welterweight, but I don't think it's his optimal fit. I think that's pretty clear. But if you're Diaz and you lose at welterweight, big deal. Mm-hmm. You still have the McGregor fight in play and that weight class or the one below. It doesn't hurt that at all. And I think also this might be a way, Marissa, for Nate to distance himself from McGregor. Right?
Yes.
I think that's a pretty key component here because he can say, I can make money and let's say he loses. I can make money and not really affect my value for the next bout with you involved. You were a great catalyst for change, but I don't really need you anymore. And if I want to do business with you in the future, I can do that as well.
And
it's a nice ace in the hole for him.
And that's the same thing that the UFC should be thinking. They should be thinking the exact same thing. That's why I can't fault anybody for making this fight because no matter what,
the UFC should not be thinking that.
Now the UFC, yes, because the UFC has only really positioned Nate when it comes in the context
what is
of
the
Conor.
objective of what is the objective of the UFC to create matches to pay off a debt load, or to create the matches that not merely for some abstract notion of its sport integrity, but that don't create perverse incentives down the line? Because I got news for you. This creates down the line extraordinarily perverse incentives for other fighters.
Absolutely.
And that is not a future I think a lot of people want to contend with.
But
you just shook up the
they
world.
need to worry about both of these things. You cannot just
How's
worry
that feel?
about one. They are both important aspects
I'm
of
not
this
surprised,
sport and the future of this sport. So we don't have a lot of stars right now. There are not a lot of stars. Conor, we don't even know if he's returning. Still. And I don't know when we're going to know if he's returning. Ronda Rousey is not returning. She is now a WWE wrestler. Okay? John Jones, for all
So
intents
sad.
and purposes, is out of this effing sport until we know more information. So what the hell do we do from here? When do we start building stars? When do we have more guys and gals that we can turn to and say, this is our big show of the year? Because Stipe Cormier, right? That'll do well on pay-per-view, but they're both not huge stars for the UFC in their own right, independently of maybe that fight. So I just don't know what it's like a conundrum that's like there's no answer to this riddle of how do you create a UFC star. It's like this lightning in a bottle kind of thing that happens, and it's always short-lived, and we never seem to be able to piggyback off of that. So I don't know, Luke.
844-796-7874, 844-SXM-RUSH. So you know this problem that we have where the ranked guys don't want to fight the unranked guys?
Yeah.
You're going to get more of that. You let fights like this happen, you're going to get more of that. Because what it's going to do is it's going to say, there are 2 ways I can advance my career. One is to catch lightning in a bottle and fight a McGregor, or get some kind of fight that is elevated by virtue of having a incredibly popular opponent. And I don't know how that's going to happen. And there's no security no matter how high you are, right? Because you can be 1 or 2 or 3 and still get leapfrogged. So that doesn't help by itself. But the other part, of course, is the higher up you are, the better your chances. So it's going to lead to a lot of fighters saying no to a lot more fights. What this sport needs is the opposite of that. What we need are guys who are willing to comply with the demands of schedule. Right? Guys who say, yes, I am telling you folks now, the more you allow for fights like this, you are paying off a short-term lender to go into debt to I don't know what the goddamn analogy is, but the point being is you're paying off something in the short run, right? We need a big card. We got to make a big splash, something like that, which is not an insignificant need, by the way. It's a big need. I acknowledge as much. You are creating perverse incentives down the road. If you're RDA and you get bypassed like this, there is no way you are taking a risk against anybody that that doesn't offer significant promotional return. And who that's going to be and how long that forces him to sit out, I don't know. This is bad. This is bad.
And it's interesting, too, Luke, that you bring it up that way, because you think about the current situation we're in with UFC 222 and Frankie Edgar, you know, down essentially to take a fight with Brian Ortega, which is a dangerous fight. A guy like that, one of these guys who's
very dangerous fight.
Extremely dangerous. You don't know how that fight's going to go. Look, I'm gonna bet on Frankie all the time, every day, all day. He's going to be tough for anybody.
In fairness, I do think Frankie deserves to be the winner, or the favorite.
Sure.
But point well taken. Point well taken.
Exactly. You know, with these young up-and-coming guys, like, anything can happen at any given moment. So Frankie's willing to take this fight and maybe lose his title shot, his last title shot possibly in his whole career. And, I mean, you do still have fighters who are willing to do that kind of thing, to save cards and to do what needs to be done for the company. But, yeah, it'll run out and wear thin if these fighters don't get